Okay, this is Matt Terenzio, and this is a screencast to demonstrate smarticle. We're at the smarticle.io site. There's an opening screen here, and up here we can click on About and Demo, and there's some information saying how smarticles are dynamic articles, they're personalized articles, data-driven personalized articles, and there's a little button here to try the demo, which we will click on. Need to sign in. Okay, and so we're at step 0 where we need to download some files that we're going to use in the creation of this tutorial, and you'll download those files and you can move on to step number 1. Now, first thing that has to be done when creating a smarticle is to create a schema. So these are going to be articles that have data behind them, and it's built on top of Fission, a project that I built with help from the Knight Prototype Fund. I call it a structured journalism repository. It's basically a place that you can store a database that can store different types of atoms of news. Depending on what your application is, those will be different. In this case, we're going to create a schema for a smarticle. You can drop a file onto here. I'm going to click on it so I don't have to leave the area here. And so I have this file called income.js, and I'm going to upload that. Why doesn't it work? Well, the reason is I've already done this. I'm not even going to go back and change this screencast. It says you have already created a model with the same name. So that'll happen. You can only have one model, one schema in the system with the same name. So I know that that's why that happened. But let's take a look at what the income.js file is all about. It's called income.js, and that's important because this is going to be the name of the schema, income. For this file, it could be anything, but it's just JSON. This is just a bunch of strings. In there is gender, median, income, FB for Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and I have a field for adjective, which I'm going to use, which you'll see how that might work later. And you can use other different types. There's a date type and a Boolean type and a number, but these are all strings for this example. And that's basically it. So it is JSON. You would have to create that, but it can be pretty simple, as you can see. And that is the schema file. You would drag that and upload it. Had I had not already created an income schema, this would have been green and said OK, and hopefully that'll be the case for you. And you can always go over the X there to see what the reason was why the upload didn't work. So let's move on to step 2, where in this case we're going to upload data. Now, probably there's you can create a client to upload single data into Fission has a way to it's an API that you can upload single items into the system, but the easiest way, and for smarticles, the best way is to upload a CSV file. So in those files that you downloaded, there's also a file called income.csv, and the name should be the same as the schema, but it should be .csv. And the first line on the CSV file would be all of those fields that we defined in schema to explain to the system that these are the fields that are going to be in this CSV file. And you can see this is a very small file. It just has two entries, one with gender, men and women, and some numbers, and this is that adjective part that will stick into our article when the time comes. So that is what the income.csv file is. This could be 2 rows or it could be 2,000 rows, depending on what you're trying to achieve here. And so let's upload that income.csv file, and that's what it looks like when you successfully upload a file. And so that's pretty much it. Now we have a schema created, and step 2, we've uploaded some data into the system for that schema. Step 3, we go to creating what is the smarticle parts, or particles, if you like that silly title. Firefox 33 is available. That has nothing to do with this screencast. Okay, so a lot of this portion I set up just for this walkthrough. You know, this might not normally happen in a situation like this. You know, some of this would happen inside a CMS, and you would put these tags that are generated into the CMS, and your smarticles would work in any CMS. So it can work in WordPress or any other CMS. It's basically all JavaScript driven, and it can happen remotely. But for the sake of this tutorial, we are going to, you know, have a headline here, my first smarticle, and a body, which you can read when we'll look at it in a second. But what's important within this body is, if we scroll down, it's important to notice that you can have HTML tags inside your particle script. So this is based on top of handlebars, but it's a script, and it would look like this. It would have an ID and text type equals text particle, and inside this is going to be a portion of your article that is dynamically generated. And so there is a paragraph within here that has some handlebars around some terms, and those correspond to the model or schema that we just created that you're going to query. So if you remember back here, they were going to be gender, income, FB, Twitter, Pinterest, and adjective. And so inside this paragraph, we're putting in placeholders for all of those different fields inside a paragraph, and that's going to change based on a query that we make. And so that's basically the gist of what the template for a smarticle would be. That is the template portion, and down below would be a query portion. Up here I've included for this also some things that are dependents like handlebars and jQuery, but the part that would be different for each smarticle is this one with an ID of particle source. And it is a query that's generated using JSON, and it looks a little scary to some people maybe, but it's not really. The ID particle 1 here corresponds to the ID in the template that's going to be inside the body of the paragraph. And then within this data we have type income, which corresponds to the model name that we created earlier. income.js, so it knows what to query. And then this query, for our example, is simple enough. Looking for where the field is gender, men, it'll pull out the data result that has gender equals men in the system. And if we submit this, I have generated a full-blown HTML. You know, this again would be as an example of another CMS, but you know, you would have the tags would still work. You can cut and paste this into anywhere. It doesn't have to be working on the smarticle site. And you can read this at your own leisure when you look at the demo, but what's important within this is this one paragraph that says overall in 2007, men who were full-time wage and salary workers had median incomes of $981. Men make up 36% of Facebook users, 32% of Twitter, and a measly 18% of Pinterest users. And so you can see how that was generated. Obviously, I have a problem here because it generated it twice, but that'll be fixed by the time you look at this. If we go back to the smarticle page that we're creating, and we change this gender in the query to woman as a simple example, and we submit this smarticle again, we can see now the paragraph says women were full-time workers, had a weekly earnings of $751, 64% of Facebook users, etc. The paragraph is now geared towards a different query. And so we have dynamically created an article targeted towards one group. Now, within your CMS, there's a number of ways that this would happen, but likely you would generate this query based upon something you know about the user. So if you know the user's gender, maybe you would make an article show certain statistics. We have another example where we use location from the app or from HTML5 geolocation, and based on that, the query will pull information that is related to the user's location. So the classic example of that would be when a user was from a certain state, and that we were talking about national education bill, we might show the results of the vote from their congressperson and deliver them their congressperson's email, so that it's more relevant towards the user in an example like that. And so that is the basic gist of what this is. These are pretty simple examples, and the queries can get kind of complicated, and we're trying to figure out ways to make them even easier. But even so, with the simple examples, you can see that it might be a very powerful tool to use in order to personalize articles for individuals. And so that is it. Check it out at smarticle.io, and feel free to contact me. The information is down at the bottom here. And that is it. And hopefully you'll find this fun and interesting. And have a good day. Screencast.